Okay, today we're going to be learning what has changed in between the 60s until in our community to how we are now in 2024. What's the difference between us? What makes me in 2024 different from the man or woman that was in 1960s? How are we different? How have our philosophies changed? How has our culture changed? What am I missing now in 2024 that we had in 1960? What was the difference? So these are the questions that we're going to go into today. The first thing that we have to look at is what were we doing back then? Back then we had plenty of programs. We had plenty of health programs. And we had plenty of educational programs. We had plenty of youth programs. And also, the biggest thing we didn't have integration. We fought so many battles outside of ourselves due to this fact. However, because we weren't integrated, we were unified as a people. And we had economic unification as well. We had black businesses. We had an economy which circulated within our community. Our kids were very, very educated. They were very, very knowledgeable, understanding, and connected to the generational lineage. So in the 60s, there was so much being poured into the youth, so much poured into the community directly, as opposed to now in 2024. So why? Why did we change? It isn't a matter of why we changed. It's a matter of how we changed. So when we look at the government and the CIA and the presidents and what was going on behind the scenes, we can see that there was many different types of clandestine operations against us at this time. There was COINTELPRO. There was mind control in the 80s and other types of clandestine operations that took place. When we look at the 70s, this was after the assassination of Martin Luther King, the assassination of Malcolm X, and the assassination of Fred Hampton. So now that we have all of these black leaders gone, as well as many other activists, we had integration started to kick in because after the assassination of Dr. King, now our economic leadership is kind of gone now. So when we look at the 70s, our dollar stopped circulating within our community. Our black businesses couldn't compete with these white corporate businesses. We're starting to see now that the health programs and the youth programs, educational programs are now starting to not get funded due to the effects of integration and us not being able to pour back into those programs. The job capacity, the job opportunities started to lower as well. So now when these job opportunities start to lower, we're on the street. We're demoralized. We're stressed out. Mentally starting to get very distressed. So now in the 70s, we're in a mind state of distress and a progressive disconnect, as well as the education. In the educational system, from the 60s or from the time of integration, the rate in which the black teachers dropped from the time that we were integrated was by like a whopping 80 or 90%. So this was a drastic disconnect from education, period, for the youth in the 70s. So when we look at this going into the 80s, we can now see that in the 80s they had very different types of, they had mind control going on, which you can read a book called The Manchurian Candidate, which explains more about mind control. And in mind control, basically they slipped in different types of various drugs like LSD, marijuana, MK Ultra, and the crack epidemic. And the idea of mind control was to manipulate a person's behavior to the point to where they go against their own will, even against the physical laws of nature. This was implemented to in what you would call the crack epidemic in the 80s. And what they would do is they would slip LSD in various in the community in various ways. Sometimes in a cigarette pack. When you go to a gas station and you buy a pack of cigarettes, and you think that you're just smoking tobacco, but really LSD or some other type of chemical drug has been slipped in there, right? So there was various different types of ways. They even progressively experimented with this in the 70s and with mass incarceration. They tried it out on inmates. So this is what took place. This is what took place in the 80s, and what this did was this drastically changed the trajectory of where we were mentally and morally. We now went from a community in the 60s of a time where we were just fighting for civil rights movement. So much was being poured into the kids. We had all these health programs, educational programs, and youth programs, and our kids were being built to be strong. They were being disciplined to be the next generation of leaders, right? So when we go to the 80s now, with the crack epidemic, we went from a community of trying to elevate ourselves in a very, very competitive, economically competitive community to now a community that focuses on nothing but sex, drugs, and guns, right? Sex, drugs, money, guns. So this drastic change had a major effect on our culture, not just in our philosophies, but in our music, right? So in our music, we look at in the 60s and 70s and 50s, it was we had the African spirituals, right? So we had the African spirituals going on around this time. But then when we hit the 80s now, we evolved into hip hop, right? It's important that we understand in each generation the evolution of man. We evolve to fit our environment for each generation that comes into place. So hip hop was the manifestation of our environment. Hip hop was something that said, okay, we had the crack epidemic. Okay, we have police brutality. Okay, we have mass incarceration. We have war on drugs. Now our music is evolving to fit our environment. So hip hop was a good thing. This was us evolving. But the effects of the crack epidemic took a turn on our music. It contaminated our music, because now we're talking about, instead of civil rights movement, human rights, and the healthy stuff, education, and all of these things for our people. Now the music has evolved more to, in the 90s, sex, drugs, guns, and money, right? So this is how the 80s contaminated our culture. It put us on a complete downward spiral in terms of our environment, because we just came out of the 70s. We're on the street, and now there's this disconnect between the child and the parents. The child is getting no type of education or health programs or any of these types of things. The black teacher is removed from the system now by about a whopping 80 to 90% rate. So with all these different things going on, now we can now they implemented the crack epidemic and the mind control. And so now this is where our image is taking even more of an effect, which is going to have an even bigger effect on the children now, because they're the ones listening to this. So children model what they see, right? So if all they're seeing is the parents getting incarcerated, all they're hearing is this type of music and all these different things going on, now the connection between the child and his lineage and what he was in the 60s, and now just the evolution of the child in general has just been completely sabotaged. So when we look at the 90s now, we can see the drastic change, but at the same time, we can see in our hip-hop culture, the hip-hop culture evolved again in the 90s. Now we're reaping economic benefits of our culture. And what I mean by this is we have streetball, we have our hip-hop music, we have all these different things to where now we're reaping benefits of our culture. And even within our community, we're doing other things to make money. But now the question is, what happened when we hit the 2000s? Now we're at a very, very different state now. The kid has been completely sabotaged. He's got no type of educational program. He's got no type of health programs. He's got no type of youth program. And all the image he sees is something completely contrary to what he was decades prior. And going on to the 2000s, the black image has got nothing but worse. Now we have record labels set up within our communities to only push a certain narrative in our music. So now, if you're not promoting sex, drugs, guns, and money, now you can't make money as an artist. So, and this continues out through various industries within our culture. Film industries. Now you can't promote a new film. Now you can't really make any movies like that unless it promotes a certain image. Now you can't do certain things unless it's pushing a certain image of the black man. Now the kid sees this. So now the kid is only being fed the image of what these oppressors or people in power want the black man's image to look like. So now the kids are only seeing this. What they want the black image to look like. This has continued throughout the 2000s, the 2010s, and all the way up to 24. Because when you get to 2010, now you have social media. Social media is a better and even more detrimental and easier way for them to promote slandering to the black image in a handheld device that you have in your pocket, right? So with all this going on, this is what has disconnected the kid from what he was or what we were back then. So these are the things that disconnect us. It's the drugs. It's the black image, the continuous slandering of the black image through generation and generation, the mass incarceration, the educational programs and the health programs that got taken out of our community due to us not being able to refinance them due to integration. So what we need to do now is, with our small businesses that we have, because we have so many small businesses, we need to combine these small businesses in order to create corporations that can rival the corporations of the white community. And when we can do this, we can start circulating our dollar again. When we start circulating our dollar again, now we can start funding these health programs, youth programs, and other types of programs that our kids need. And education. We can give them different ways of education about themselves so they can build their self-esteem. So with this, these are what we can do to help turn back the tide and connect us back to our lineage. Because with these different things, now we can start to educate. Everything that we want comes through economics, education, health, these youth programs, and all the things that we want as a community, and all the things that we look for in a community, in the community, is going to come from economics, being economically stable. So the education is very, very crucial. We have to educate ourselves about ourselves to build our self-esteem and build our trust with each other and rival against the black image that they portray of us in social media and in music and various things. These are things we've already started to do, right? When we look at the music, you have Kendrick Lamar, you have Dreamville, J. Cole, right? You have these different types of artists that have infiltrated the music industry. You have various types of actors who've infiltrated the entertainment industry, like Denzel Washington and Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan, right? You have different types of people who have infiltrated and who have dedicated their lives to this cause, right? So infiltrating these things like art. What are we doing to infiltrate the cartoons that we see? What would be good is to create an African cartoon film production system instead of because the Japanese have animes and the Americans have cartoons. We need to have an African one. It's a matter of infiltrating these images because we have to start relating image to mental development and psychological development because that's what these things are. So it's all what we see in media through this cell phone, and this is very, very important. Economics is crucial, but this is almost even more important. This is just as important. What we see and how we're mentally developing ourselves. They go hand in hand, right? So if we can change the image of what we look like, and if we can start to utilize the phone and the TV and these types of things, we can deteriorate the kid from social media, and we can deteriorate the kid from the beats. In doing this, now we're unlocking another side of our brain that we're not implementing right now. We always want to attack the side of, the political side. Oh, they're not helping us. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. Oh, we need to do this. We need to do that. What we need to do as well is to train our minds and focus on the image and the mental, right? We always want to fight our battles physical as black people. We always fight the physical battles, but we never fight the mental battles. This is a balance. This is a war on two different types of rounds, right? There's a physical element to it, then there's the mental element that we miss sometimes. And art and film I believe, is the biggest, is one way that we're not really implementing right now. We can. So I believe that as well as fixing our problems economically, I believe that what we need to do is focus on the mind and the mental aspect of it. And we need to put ourselves in proper light, and we need to flood the internet with not only positive images of the black man, but uplifting and motivating and awareness and informative and secondhand experience. This way we can unify ourselves. This is how I believe we're going to be able to get a universal effect on us all throughout the world. I believe it's going to come through the image, and it's going to be something that plays on the mind. So this is the battle that is very, very important that I really, really feel like we need to start fighting and start getting into. And when we can start doing this is what's going to be able to keep us uplifted, because we are divided. We're spread out even more so than we were when we got taken from them ships from Africa, right? So now what we need to do is unite through the mind, because the mind is something that I feel like we don't always strike in 2024. I feel like this is something that was implemented back then, in decades prior, but right now, as of 2024, I do not feel like the mind is really being. We're not really attacking it. We're not really fighting the mental side of things, which is just as important as the physical. So this is what I believe needs to take place, and I feel like this is what will uphold or drag our community and the people of this generation, our generation now, upward. And I feel like this is what's going to keep us evolving and being connected to our lineage. So thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to see y'all in the next course.